Well, Jim, what are we doing here today? It's a beautiful day.
Well, it's a beautiful day in America. Everywhere you go, you can handle the heat, you can handle the street. But I gotta say something about our streets. Our people, our leaders, they should really take basically a page out of our good general, first commander in chief, General George Washington. You know much about him?
Was he our first president of this country, Jim?
Yeah, he was. And he was alone and basically commanded the respect of both parties back at the time. And he was chosen unanimously to preside over the Constitutional Convention.
That was back in the 1776 or something?
Yeah, and then he was was first president in 1789.
Oh, I see.
And basically his, not only was he courageous in basically sacrificing himself, put his life, liberty, his honor, and his fortune all on the line for the American Revolution, but had to withstand devastating odds. Had to escape from that Brooklyn site with the fog and quietly removed his troops and made a tactical retreat without making a sound with some friends, some maritime locals, and luckily the full moon was light, and also tricked the British by hitting some bells, making some chatter while they were evacuating. And also by his boldness on Christmas Eve, 1775.
They're like guerrilla warfare.
Well, yeah,
Kind of.
what he did there, back in 1776, was that he went ahead and took those boys out, those Germans, those Hessians and Trenton, and surprised them, and basically got the people all fired up, the Congress, and the people to re-enlist. They were motivated to re-enlist because they thought they could win. There was hope. Real hope when everything else was on the line.
Right.
So, but anyway, of course, he took Cornwallis out in 1781, several years later, marking the end of the war. Now, I have a couple good lines from him, because what he said back then really applies today. He once said, "Few men have virtue to withstand the highest bidder." Now, you look at the president, 46 down, 45 presidents later, did he have the virtue to withstand the highest bidder?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Did you associate yourself with men of good quality if you esteem your own reputation? For it is better to be alone than in bad company.
Well, that sounds right.
Well, I think our president could have adhered and took heed on that too.
Yeah, our current people are just, I think they all lost their minds, Jim.
And then he once said, "I hope I shall always possess firmness and virtue enough to maintain what I consider the most enviable of all titles, the character of an honest man."
Well, that's awesome, Jim.
Yeah, well, if you got people that are honest, liberty, when it begins to take root, is a plant of rapid growth. And so if we could get honest people and plant liberty in places like China and other places, we can get growth there, and maybe these people can uproot under the tyranny, the hard tyranny that are under there. We're under soft tyranny here now in America.
Yeah, well, so you have to bring themselves up, right, Jim?
Yeah, well, reason, too late perhaps, but may convince you and others of the folly of misspending time following and supporting a regime that does not respect the individual sovereign, not respect your God-given rights, and only respects the grand visions of empire of man that wants to rule over other men. But when you have power to dominate another person, that's actually weakness. Strength is that will celebrate and rise up with that other man and make them your ally. Weakness looks to growth only by domination, and that does not work. Well, and I want to say one other thing. He also said something very smart that luckily was put in that Defense Authorization Act of 2024. And that was to be prepared for war is one of the most effectual means of preserving peace. Reagan understood it. Donald J. Trump, as president, certainly understood it. There were no wars. We are not in any wars. In fact, he didn't put us in any wars or any conflicts for a long time. He was very good about that. Now we're in a much more dire straits again.
Well, what does that mean to the common man here, Jim? I mean,
well,
normal
it means
people.
Everything, because the time, quote, Washington again, quote, "the time is near at hand which must determine whether Americans are free to be free men or slaves.
Oh, well, what about those slaves, Jim?
Well, I think you can be enslaved in a lot of ways. Maybe not in the traditional sense that, unfortunately, so many of our brothers were, a couple centuries ago in this country. But slaves in the sense that slave labor, people that are working against their will and being exploited economically, spiritually, and otherwise, don't have certain rights that the elite feudal lords or masters have. You see that in China and other parts of the world all the time. There's slavery now. You see sex trafficking slavery, which is amazing. The Sound of Freedom, a movie that came out, Jim Caviezel, talking about this real-life hero that went in there and saved hundreds of young girls from a life of slavery, sex trafficking, of the worst kind. And Hollywood out here in Atlanta, Sodom and Gomorrah, condemned that movie. Oh, no, he's cute on write him off. How can they be against a movie like that? Are they pedophiles everywhere? They want to legitimize that? It seems so that they let all this garbage into the schools, and they call it book banning if they don't let the little children have explicit pornographic basic materials and writings at a young age. Again, without the consent of the parent. Can you believe that?
That's ridiculous, Jim.
Well, but they'll call that, if you don't let that happen, that's banning books. No, you can get those books if you're of age. Doesn't matter. We've always had control of the curriculum of young children. In fact, it's gotten to the point where it's either their way or they freak out and cry foul. A bunch of spoiled children, in my opinion.
Okay, Jim.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. So if we quote Washington once again, if the freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. And that's what you're also seeing. So all these lines, these quotes I've mentioned to you, okay?
From George Washington?
Yes. All 7 of them ring truer today than they ever have, maybe even back in his time when he actually wrote them. But, the thing is, if we can become friends, true friendship, this is another one, true friendship is a plant of slow growth and must undergo and withstand the shocks of adversity before it is entitled to the appellation.
What does that really mean, Jim?
Well, that true friendship, you've got to go through some adversity to really, tough it up so it can handle adversity before you can really count on it and learn that you can appeal to the friendship in order to overcome that adversity. That's exactly what it means. And people don't understand that today. They think if you can't get along right here,
you got to do it a different way or something.
Well, no, they're straight through adversity, But we got this.
Well, it makes you stronger, Jim.
This group think where everybody's so easily offended and to proverbially butthurt over things that should not concern them in that way. That they should think through it and link through how we come up and solve problems, real problems, rather than worry about people's feelings. We need to get back to the age of reason. That's right, and the Bible teaches us that reason through faith. Sometimes you have to have faith where all what you can see and touch does not give you the evidence to believe that it's real, but you transcend that because in your spirit you know it is. That's faith. And sometimes when you have a loss, sometimes when you're down and out, you want to lift yourself up. The best way to do that is to lift someone else up. That's Booker T. Washington talking to you there.
Yeah, Jim.
Okay, so another man in the early 20th century who knew a lot more. A man from the heartland of America, Iowa State, from Ames. Okay. Now, basically, we got to really get back to what we're talking about. And really think about more about how we got to get ahead.
Or we got to be free.
We got to be free. And we got to be able to forgive. Forgive those other people and bring them into our camp. The great Andrew Jackson, who's wrongfully persecuted and disparaged by modern thinkers who don't really understand anything about history. He once said the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. And that is true. Andrew Jackson, the first ever elected president by the people, our 7th president, and a savior of America, who really finished off the War of 1812 on that magnificent day on January 7th, 1815 in New Orleans. What leadership displayed. He had like 3,000 or 4,000 troops, but they weren't troops at that time. He had 2 or 3 weeks to put all these disparate groups of different walks, different color, different creed. And none of them liked each other, more or less wanted to fight, but he could marshal them together. And they all fought as one. That's American leadership. And that's what we need now. Unfortunately, we don't have it. You had a man that put his own line and wealth on the line to support his troops, even took him to his own home. But they disparaged, oh, he had slavery. Well, they were like family to him. He grew up with that. In fact, he even took in some of the warring tribes that he had to go up against, their children as his own son. So he was trying to mend the thing. And they talk about the frontiers, yeah, because the people back then, the wars and the warrior tribes, they would fight each other. They were very bellicose in many ways.
Yeah.
And he was trying to preserve their way of life in a way that only he thought at the time was to move them out of there because the place was overrun by settlers coming from European descent. And there's nothing anybody could have done to stop that. Not even the president, the government. The government wasn't as centralized as now. And it has a hard enough time to do its job now, even though it has ample resources that good old Hickory never had back then in the 1830s. So, the only tyrant he accepts in this world is the still voice within. He won't accept it elsewise. And when you have honest differences, are often a healthy sign of progress, where you can have honest differences in an honest discussion about the facts. Unfortunately, on almost every debate, from the congressional chambers in D.C. to the non-debate within the Biden groupthink, anti-American Marxist White House, cultural Marxism, they don't have honest debate, and therefore we don't get to what I've been getting at, is to have that honest debate, to have healthy progress, and that's through meritocracy with a capital A meritocracy. Meritocracy.
What does that mean, Jim?
Well, meritocracy is where you give people all a chance to get involved and the best ideas move forward based on merit, not based on currying political favor, not based on influence and lobbying somebody when you know that's not the best solution at hand, and to exhaust the resources, the possibility, and the function of mind, spirit, and the opinions of those who care and have studied to come up with the best solution, whatever the problem may be. We know in meritocracy there's a much better way to do our retirement. We talked about that so everybody can retire wealthy. Isn't that in the best interest of the people?
Well, of course it is, Jim.
So they're less dependent on government. They get a fair shake of what their money really would have earned.
Yep.
And they get rid of the relative. They talk about inequality between people, races in America. You know, the bigots on the left talked about that. Well, one way to get rid of that relative inequality, if you want to look at it through that lens of the bigoted left, is through my program, where people actually get returned. Working people, where they all get ownership of what they get. It's not a recessive tax. It's a way for, especially for younger and older and less income people, to have a really good retirement where they have a 7-figure lump sum that's theirs. And they can bequeath to their family. That does not exist today. We could do that right now and not lose a penny to Social Security, not waste an extra dollar. In fact, we'll have a bigger tax base, and we can guarantee that the people that participate in this program would have just as much money they would have had under the old system.
Sounds fair.
Well, why not? But we got to guarantee it anyway, because all that money you give them is spent. They have to do that now anyway. So there's no really counter argument because we have the facts. We have precedent that this actually works. It's a much better system. And by the way, it was a voluntary system after, I think, 18 months or 2 years when FDR started in the mid-30s. Even him, arguably a Marxist himself, would be rolling in his grave of what it's become now. It's become an entitlement big program bigger than the Department of Defense expenditures. It doesn't need to be. It ought to be your money, goes in there, and it reinvests for companies, and we can make sure we can pay for everything, too, by this program, the people that already have the benefits that are already built in the system. This is for people working now.
Well, that sounds fair for the common man.
And the infrastructure is all set up. So we need to do that.
What's the first step, Jim?
And by the way, freedom. Another great Andrew Jackson quote: freedom is not worth having if it does not connote freedom to err. that you have a chance to just, really do what you can do. And if you fail, okay, you can come back. That's what would happen in business, creditors and stuff like that. We have bankruptcy. So, but now people are so worried that they do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, that they're marred for life, they're tagged for life, that if they fail, they'll never get another chance. That's not America, but too many of our young people believe that. And they're also weak. They also believe that people can't forgive, when actually that's been an attribute of the strong in America for centuries, especially those that fear God. Okay, so let us fear God, and we shall cease to fear man. That's another great Jackson quote that people need to understand. Let us fear God, and then we shall cease to fear man. And then if you walk the way of the Lord, then you don't have to fear God. Then you don't have to live in fear at all. And therefore you get rid of your anger. You get rid of your spite, your resentment, and all these things that kill the body, mind, and soul. And your spirit will roam high and actualize what your self was all about.
Oh, that's good, Jim. Amen.
Amen is right. Thank you. So, I just think, we got to really start getting this instilled in our kid. But to quote the great JFK, because our children need it, a child miseducated is a child lost. And that's what happened under COVID with these unions that did not let kids get out and take choice, and really made it worse for the same people that they're trying to keep locked in. The truth is that the left, the unions, they know the relevance really depends on keeping certain groups of society down, as if they potentially will need these other groups, these administrators, which they don't. We need to actually put more money into the teachers, less administration. It's almost like at the FBI, they want to put billions of dollars in a more centralized main FBI, have less people out in the field, put billions of dollars in this building and stuff like that. I think that's wrong. That's almost like, you're adding more money of a finite pool of money to a bunch of administrators that are not, and less teachers.
And you get less out of it.
You get less out of it, less results. No, I think you get more people out there fighting crime, less administrators, get people to know what they're doing, and that's a much better way of getting things done. Same thing in the military. We need to train our troops, get people more able to actually work, within the way we do things. The objective response is this in our military. One of the reasons why American military is great, we actually decentralize authority and make it mission driven. So when you're told from the top down to take Hill 504, right, in something, but the enemy is moved over to 506, right?
Right, then you got to adjust.
You don't wait for permission. The objective overrides the tactic of the information. It's not like some order that you bought, something you have to talk to the shipping department and get things changed around. No, you move on to 506 without hesitation, don't you?
You be adaptable.
You adapt. You overcome. You're a soldier. You know the mission. It's your turn to execute. You have to take over power of the executive in your own hands. That's what we need people to do now at the educational level, the operating level, and we turn a nation into independent operators who work tightly within objectives to get things done and to service not only the customers or client, but more importantly, the people, the community of the United States of America.
Well, that sounds like a good plan, Jim.
Well, we don't see that now, do we, in Congress? We don't see that in government because they are not accountable. They don't feel the pain from their mistakes. They keep paying themselves. And if there is some pain, and there is some discomfort, if there is some bad news, they cover it up with their cohorts in the media. The fourth branch of their little government, their little faction, the little yunta. It's a yunta out there.
So is it do we need a coup, Jim? What?
Yeah, well, but we like to forgive. So forgive your enemies, but never forget their names. JFK on that one, too.
Well, that's very interesting, Jim. Anything else you want to impart to the people on this beautiful day?
Well, I got to tell you, those out there who make peaceful revolution impossible, and those are the people that in China, they would never let a peaceful revolution happen. They killed their own people. It happened in Tiananmen Square. It happened in the 50s with the Great Leap Forward in China from 58 to 62. Read your history. And the Cultural Revolution in the 60s, the little red book, that's what they got going on now in America. The little Mao's running D.C. Well, anyway, those people who made peaceful revolution or change is impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. And I'm afraid about that we're going to be running into that we got a president who's going to sleepwalk us into World War III because he keeps bumbling and making the wrong statements and projects weakness every step of the way. And he has administration or groupthink that don't step out of line and correct the man and challenge the assumptions of what is necessary to keep the peace, strength, and autonomy of the United States intact. The only person I see that on the left there is our good friend Robert Kennedy Jr., who understood the strength of his uncle, who I just quoted for all of you.
Thank you, Jim.
Well, I tell you something right now. The time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. And the sun is still shining out today, but the roof is badly damaged. Let's get up there and clean this roof up and clean up America. God bless you all.
God bless us, Jim.
And God bless our wonderful presidents that came before. May we one day live up to that title of President Be Strong. If it isn't Donald Trump coming on from 45 to 47, may it be somebody else that's really, really great. That maybe someone we don't even know yet might get into the race. I like some of these fellas out here. Some of these Yale alum boys, they seem to have a good idea. Not so much from Harvard, but I do like the Harvard, the land of the harlot. We don't need any more harlot Harvard types. We need some strong Yale boys that got the mind straight and they know their faith in God and they go down to the mission. They go down the mission, they give back what they take. More so every day. And you do the same, people. And by lifting somebody up, you lift yourself up and you'll soar higher than ever before. So don't get down the dumps. Help out your neighbor, and let's all breed a work ethic that we once had as a people, a caring that we once had. Not sharing and caring in some collectivist mindset, but a caring so that other people can be individuals and be proud of themselves, proud of their family, proud and protective and vigilant about the individual sovereign that keeps us all strong.
Yay, Jim, that's great.
Good night. God bless America.
God bless America.
We love you too.